Philippe Godbout, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Dassault Systèmes today seems to be at a sweet spot or at a good position because modelization seems to be extremely important for modelizing, therefore reducing the cost on people, on staff, on models and so forth, especially in an industrial powerhouse like Japan. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So we're expanding from just creating 3D models. We are actually creating what we call virtual twins now.
Okay.
And the virtual twin is more than just the digitalization of what a product will be. It's putting it in the context of how it's going to be used in order to be able to simulate, test, understand the impact.
Up to recycling?
Up to recycling, up to the use in this context. So it's more than that. And now it's not only 3D model that we modelize, we actually modelize the whole enterprise. So if you understand that an enterprise it's processes that defines what needs to be done, if you can modelize your enterprise, you can understand now what is the impact of changes that you make to the requirements. So of course many companies are now interested as they need to change their offer to the market and what they produce and what is their end user goals. Changing the company and changing the enterprise process, if you can predict the impact that it will have, you can better make decisions in terms of, and that's what the digital twin or the virtual twin we are referring to, and that's what now the market is actually demanding after having for many, many years developed what they call their 3D models.
So in terms of energy transition, for example, how does it impact modelization? I guess is it much harder to make forecasts, for example? Is the mathematical model harder to make around? Because I guess it has a huge consequence. So is it hard, easier? How does it affect you?
In terms of the energy, well, if you think about the developments, right? So if you are able to understand how the development is done from, let's say, the molecule, you create a new material, and you say this material needs to be used with these properties, and these properties are needed because I want to print my part instead of the traditional maybe manufacturing processes. Now you understand how much effort and how much energy will be required and how much pollution may be generated from this consumption. So this is what we are thinking in terms of sustainability and the life cycle of the product. So yes, energy is at the core of what we think of sustainability today, and the usage of energy to create product or use them or recycle them is what I was mentioning in terms of what we can do now. All of this before producing it, and therefore before, you know exactly what's going to happen before you do it.
So now, virtual twin, does it apply to, from let's say, I don't know, a toy to a whole city, to a whole country? What are the limits of modelization, if there is any, of modelization?
Our approach is really to put the human at the center of the experience. So what does that mean? It means that you take a life science topic, all right, and you think about the patient, how the patient is experiencing before actually it happens to you. You go to a clinic and you try to understand how you will go in a room and how you're going to be impacted by the machine, a scanner. Or you can have the experience before you've put the human at the center of what you do. You take the same thing in terms of the city. You take the citizen and the people, how they live in the city, how maybe a natural disaster will impact them and what they will have to do. If you can simulate that in the city before, then the life of the human living in the city and the citizen will be changed. So it's easy in terms of manufacturing, we always can imagine, but you can now do it at the overall level of the city or at the different domains such as life science or healthcare. And that's what we think that the virtual twin, we put the people at first and the human at first, is really what will differentiate from traditional way of doing today.
Because what was always striking a bit or worrying about the smart city world was that it seemed to apply to a city that has to be built, not to, let's say, old Paris or Manhattan or a smart city. Should we just think it more as a place where people already are in a city that already exists rather than a city that people will build from scratch?
So, of course, the virtual world is the virtual world, so you can do what you want. What is powerful about the platform approach is that it's not just information that doesn't exist. you can combine real information that is happening in the real world, combine it in the virtual twin, and then analyze what is the impact. Let's take an example of a natural disaster happening in Kyoto. We have the virtual twin of Kyoto. We have now the information of the mobile phone of everybody, every citizen in the city. And then when the disaster happened, what's going to happen, what direction they need to take, where do they need to go, they don't have this information, but you have it with the virtual twin. So you can start to identify what are the safe locations to go and direct your population towards that. So that's what smart cities can be really about, other than, of course, just new buildings and so on. It's really this way that we can influence the society and really improve the way that people live.
So does it mean that you include psychology, you include human interaction, you include the way people think? Does it go that far? Does it go into other sciences?
Of course, at this time, we are talking about data and information. And of course, what you want to do is make your population feel maybe a little bit more safer, right? So it does have an influence for the people in the city that knows that you are in the city as a plan, and make, of course, the population feel much safer about where they live and what to do. And you know, in Japan, they like to understand the plan and understand where to go, and they make sure. So I think for Japanese people, this kind of approach is a significant one in order to be prepared, whatever would happen. And since we are relying on a lot of natural different disasters in Japan, earthquake, but also the tsunami, but also we have a typhoon coming and so on. Of course, the more you're prepared, the more you can predict, the better you can make a decision as governors or decision makers. And that is really the most difficult part, is how decision-making process is happening, right? So I don't know about the emotion itself yet, but of course it's as a purpose of helping the society.
Is there one lesson Dassault Systèmes learned from COVID in modelization? Is there something that when you were looking because there was a lot of modelization at the time in the beginning of the pandemic, what did you learn in terms of modelization, if any lesson?
So what we have observed is that there's a lot of companies that felt like they couldn't do the work, remote work and collaboration. It was quite difficult because they were not set up their process this way. But most of our customers, they use our platform. They were already online. They knew how to turn around. And so the challenge was not continuing to do their work. The challenge was how to maybe collaborate online. So it was just the new way of working. But as far as for us in terms of technology, on the modelization aspect, not so much. What we realized though is that when it was very important to develop the vaccine, we needed to improve the cycle time of testing and what we call the clinical trial. And during that period of time, our technology was really used in order to understand better and predict better what would be the result of the vaccine. And therefore, the information and science that we had really helped to reduce the cycle time and bring a vaccine to the market in a faster way, which was really needed to get everybody restarted. So those are the kind of learning that we have.
Philippe, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.